When Araya signs on to be a surrogate for a cold-hearted billionaire, she never expects to fall for his grieving son, or the man himself. But can love survive a contract and a custody war that threatens everything? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m. and Araya Samuels groaned as she reached to silence it. Another day, another struggle to make ends meet. Her small apartment in Newark was clean but worn, much like her spirit these days. "Auntie, you awake?" she called out, pulling on her robe and shuffling to the kitchen. "I'm making your breakfast before I head to work." Aunt Delia's voice came back weakly from the bedroom. "I'm up, baby girl, don't you worry about me." But Araya did worry. For 3 years now, she'd been caring for her aunt, whose multiple sclerosis had worsened to the point where she needed help with daily tasks. The medical bills piled up faster than Araya could pay them, even with her 2 part-time jobs. As she scrambled eggs, Araya stared at the notice on the refrigerator. Final warning. Their health insurance wouldn't cover the new treatment Aunt Delia desperately needed. They needed $75,000, and they needed it soon. "Lord, show me a way," she whispered, wiping away a single tear before it could fall into the eggs. After settling Aunt Delia with breakfast and medication, Araya rushed to catch the bus to her morning job at the coffee shop. Her afternoon position as a receptionist at a community center barely paid better, but between the two, she managed to keep a roof over their heads. "Morning, sunshine," her co-worker Tamika greeted her. "You look beat." "Just the usual," Araya replied, tying her apron. "Auntie had a rough night." Tamika leaned in close. "Did you think about that thing I mentioned? My cousin did it. Made enough to pay off her student loans and put a down payment on a condo." Araya's hands stilled on the coffee machine. Surrogacy. Tamika had brought it up last week, mentioning an exclusive agency that matched surrogates with wealthy clients. The pay was substantial, life-changing even. "I don't know, Tam. Carrying a baby for 9 months and then just giving it away, how do you do that? Girl, you sign a contract, you get paid, and you move on. It's business, and it could solve your problems." The morning rush kept Araya too busy to think more about it, but during her lunch break, she found herself looking up Precious Beginnings, the agency Tamika had mentioned. Their website was tasteful, showing happy families and promising dreams fulfilled through compassionate carriers. The starting compensation, $100,000 plus medical expenses and living allowance. Araya's heart raced. That would cover Aunt Delia's treatment and give them breathing room. But could she really do it? That evening, after helping Aunt Delia into bed, Araya sat at their small kitchen table and made the call. "Precious Beginnings, this is Eleanor speaking." "Hi, I'm interested in becoming a surrogate," Araya said, her voice barely above a whisper. 2 weeks later, after a battery of health screenings and psychological evaluations, Araya sat in the plush waiting room of Precious Beginnings' downtown office. The furnishings screamed money, all mahogany and soft leather. "Miss Samuels?" A sleek blonde woman appeared in the doorway. "I'm Eleanor Winters. We spoke on the phone. Please come with me." Eleanor led her down a hallway to a conference room where she explained the process. "You've been matched with one of our most prestigious clients," Eleanor said, sliding a folder across the table. "He's specifically requested a surrogate with your health profile and background. The compensation package is exceptional." Araya opened the folder to find a contract offering $150,000, 50% more than standard. "Why me?" she asked, suspicious. "Mr. Reed has very specific requirements. You're healthy, educated, and have no desire for parental rights. Plus," Eleanor added with a practiced smile, "discretion is paramount to him." "Reed, as in Lachlan Reed, the investment guy?" Eleanor nodded. "The very same. He's a widower with a 5-year-old son. He lost his wife during childbirth. Now he wants a daughter to complete his family." Araya's stomach tightened. She'd seen Lachlan Reed in business magazines. Cold, handsome, ruthless. The kind of man who got what he wanted. "He wants to meet you tomorrow," Eleanor continued. "Just a formality. If you're both comfortable, we'll proceed with the medical process next week." That night Araya couldn't sleep. She sat by Aunt Delia's bedside, watching her labored breathing. "What's troubling you, child?" Aunt Delia asked, always sensing when something was wrong. "I found a way to get your treatment," Araya said softly. "But it's complicated." Aunt Delia reached for her hand. "Nothing worth having comes easy. But don't sell your soul, baby girl." "What about my body?" Araya whispered too quietly for her aunt to hear. The next day, Araya wore her best dress, a simple navy blue number she saved for job interviews, The Reed financial headquarters in downtown Manhattan towered over her, all glass and intimidation. The receptionist directed her to the private elevator. "Mr. Reed is expecting you. Top floor." The elevator opened directly into a massive office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A small boy played quietly in the corner with toy cars, while a tall figure stood with his back to her, gazing out at the skyline. "Mr. Reed?" Araya's voice sounded smaller than she intended. He turned, and Araya's breath caught. Photographs didn't do him justice. Lachlan Reed was striking. Dark hair, piercing blue eyes, strong jawline, but there was something haunted in his expression, something broken beneath the expensive suit. "Ms. Samuels." His voice was deep, clipped. "Thank you for coming." He didn't offer to shake hands. "This is my son, Nathan." The little boy looked up briefly, his eyes, so like his father's, regarding her solemnly before returning to his toys. "Please, sit." Lachlan gestured to the seating area. Araya perched on the edge of the sofa, clutching her purse like a shield. "I'll be direct," Lachlan said, remaining standing. "I don't believe in wasting time. I've reviewed your file. You meet my requirements. I'm prepared to increase the compensation to $200,000 if you agree to certain additional terms." Araya's eyes widened. "What kind of terms?" "Absolute privacy. No social media, no contact with press, and you'll need to stay at my estate during the final trimester for monitoring." "Live with you?" Araya frowned. "That wasn't mentioned before." "My wife died during childbirth, Ms. Samuels. I won't take chances with this pregnancy." Something in his tone, clinical, detached, sparked something in Araya. "The baby," she said quietly. "Do you ever call it that? A baby, not a pregnancy or a requirement." Lachlan's expression hardened. "I'm not looking for emotional complications, Ms. Samuels. This is a business arrangement. I want a daughter. You need money. The contract protects us both. And what happens to the child if something goes wrong? If she's not perfect? Excuse me. You heard me. If she has a disability. If she's not what you ordered. What then?" Lachlan's jaw tightened. "Any child born will be my responsibility, regardless of health status. And you'll love her? Not just provide for her?" "Ms. Samuels, I don't believe my capacity for love is relevant to our arrangement." Araya stood up, surprising herself with her boldness. "It's completely relevant to me. I'm not giving this baby, yes, baby, to someone who sees her as an acquisition." For a moment, Lachlan looked genuinely startled. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "No one speaks to me that way." "Maybe they should," Araya replied, heart pounding. "I should go. This was a mistake." As she turned to leave, a small voice stopped her. "Are you going to have a baby?" Nathan had abandoned his cars and now stood beside her, looking up with curious eyes. Araya glanced at Lachlan, who gave a small nod. "I might," she answered gently, kneeling to the boy's level. "Would you like that? A little brother or sister?" Nathan considered this seriously. "A sister? Daddy said maybe I could have a sister." "Nathan," Lachlan's voice held a warning, "go back to your toys." The boy's shoulders slumped as he obeyed, and Araya felt a pang in her heart. "Ms. Samuels," Lachlan said, his tone softer now, "perhaps we've started badly. The truth is, my son needs a sibling. I need—" He paused, seeming to search for words. "Completion, for my family." Something in his hesitation touched Araya. Behind the cold exterior, she glimpsed a man who had suffered, who was still suffering. "Mr. Reed, I need to be honest. I need the money desperately. My aunt is sick, and this could save her life. But I can't treat this like just a transaction. This will be a life, a baby connected to me in the most basic way. I need to know she'll be cherished." Lachlan was quiet for a long moment. "I don't make promises lightly, Ms. Samuels, but I can promise you this. Any child of mine will want for nothing, materially or otherwise. It wasn't exactly a declaration of love, but it was something, a crack in the armor." "May I think about it?" Araya asked. "Of course. The offer stands until the end of the week." On her way out, Araya passed Nathan again. He looked up at her with those solemn blue eyes. "I'd be nice to her," he said quietly. "The sister." Araya smiled. "I know you would, sweetie." 3 days later, Araya signed the contract. 2 weeks after that, the first embryo transfer was successful. And just like that, Araya Samuels was carrying Lachlan Reed's baby. The first trimester passed with minimal contact. Araya attended appointments at a private clinic where she was monitored by Dr. Hayes, a maternal specialist hired by Lachlan. The money started coming in installments, and Aunt Delia began her new treatment. "How are you feeling, Doctor?" Hayes asked during her 12-week checkup. Fine, Araya replied. Morning sickness is finally easing up. And emotionally? Araya hesitated. I'm okay. It's strange, knowing this isn't my baby to keep, but I'm at peace with my decision. Dr. Hayes smiled kindly. Mr. Reed has asked to attend the next ultrasound. Is that all right with you? Araya was surprised. Yes, of course. When she arrived for her 16-week appointment, Lachlan was already there, looking uncomfortable in the waiting room. He stood when he saw her. Ms. Samuels. He nodded stiffly. Mr. Reed. She noticed dark circles under his eyes. Is everything okay? Fine. Nathan's been asking about the baby. I thought I should see how things are progressing. In the examination room, Dr. Hayes spread gel on Araya's growing belly. Let's see how our little one is doing. The whooshing sound of the heartbeat filled the room, and Araya instinctively looked at Lachlan. His expression had transformed, the hardness melting away as he stared at the monitor. Is that? He whispered. That's your daughter's heartbeat, Dr. Hayes confirmed. Strong and steady. Lachlan moved closer, his eyes fixed on the screen where a tiny form could be seen moving. She's sucking her thumb, Dr. Hayes pointed out. Without thinking, Araya reached for Lachlan's hand. He stiffened but didn't pull away. That's your baby girl, she said softly. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, Araya saw something vulnerable in his gaze. Thank you, he said quietly, and she knew he meant it. As they left the clinic, Lachlan seemed reluctant to part ways. Would you have time for lunch? He asked awkwardly. Surprised, Araya nodded. I'd like that. He took her to a small, discreet restaurant where the staff knew him well enough to give them privacy. Over soup and sandwiches, Araya learned that Nathan had been asking non-stop about his sister. He wants to know her name, Lachlan said, looking uncomfortable. I haven't thought about it. You haven't chosen a name yet. Lachlan shifted in his seat. My wife Caroline had picked out names before we lost her, but I can't use those. It would feel like a replacement. Araya finished for him. I understand. Do you? His eyes searched hers. My parents died when I was 15, she explained. Car accident. I went to live with Aunt Delia. Nothing can replace what you've lost, Mr. Reed. But new love doesn't diminish old love. It just expands your heart. Something shifted in Lachlan's expression. You speak as if from experience. Araya smiled sadly. Just observation. And hope. When they parted, Lachlan seemed reluctant. Nathan has been asking to meet you. Would that be acceptable? I'd love to meet him properly, Araya replied sincerely. The following Saturday, Araya found herself invited to the Reed estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. The house was enormous, a colonial mansion set on sprawling grounds with a view of the Long Island Sound. Nathan greeted her at the door, bouncing with excitement. Daddy said you have my sister in your tummy, Araya laughed. I do. Would you like to feel her kick? She's been very active today. Nathan nodded eagerly. Araya took his small hand and placed it on her belly. After a moment, the baby kicked, and Nathan's eyes widened in wonder. She kicked me. Daddy, come feel. Lachlan approached hesitantly. With gentle encouragement from Araya, he placed his hand beside his son's. When the baby kicked again, a smile, the first genuine smile Araya had seen from him, transformed his face. She knows it's you, Araya said softly. How could she? Lachlan asked, but his hand lingered. Babies know more than we think, Araya replied. I talk to her all the time. Lachlan looked startled. You do? Of course. She can hear us now. She's learning your voices. Nathan tugged at his father's sleeve. Can I talk to her too? Go ahead, Araya encouraged. The little boy leaned close to her belly. Hi, sister. I'm Nathan. I'm your big brother. I'm going to teach you lots of things when you come out. Araya's heart melted, and when she glanced up, she saw Lachlan watching his son with a mixture of love and pain in his eyes. After that day, something changed. Lachlan began calling regularly to check on her. He invited her to dinner at the estate every week, ostensibly so Nathan could talk to his sister. But Araya noticed Lachlan lingering in their conversations, asking about her life, her dreams. She learned that beneath his cold exterior was a man who had loved his wife deeply and who had shut down emotionally after her death. The only person who received his affection was Nathan. As her 5th month of pregnancy began, Araya received terrible news. Aunt Delia's condition had worsened despite the new treatment. She needed round-the-clock care. When Lachlan called that evening, he immediately sensed something was wrong. What's happened? He asked, his voice concerned. Through tears, Araya explained the situation. Move into the estate, Lachlan said without hesitation. Both of you. I have nursing staff for Nathan's nanny's mother. They can care for your aunt as well. Lachlan, I couldn't. Please, he interrupted. It's practical. You'll be moving in for the final trimester anyway. This way, your aunt gets the care she needs, and you can focus on staying healthy for the baby. The fact that he'd called it the baby instead of the pregnancy wasn't lost on Araya. 2 days later, Araya and Aunt Delia were settled in the east wing of the Reed mansion. Nathan was thrilled, running to Araya's room every morning to greet both her and his sister. Lachlan remained cautious, keeping a certain distance, but Araya caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. Sometimes, his gaze held something more than mere concern for his surrogate. One evening, as Arya sat on the terrace watching the sunset, Lachlan joined her. "How are you feeling?" he asked, offering her a cup of herbal tea, prepared exactly as she liked it. "Better than I have in years," she admitted. "Knowing Aunt Delia is getting good care, it's lifted a weight off me." Lachlan sat beside her. "You've carried too many burdens for someone so young." "We all have our crosses to bear," she replied, looking at him meaningfully. He was quiet for a moment. Caroline would have been 34 next month. It was the first time he'd mentioned his wife's name to her. "Tell me about her," Arya said gently. To her surprise, he did. He spoke of Caroline's laugh, her passion for art, her dreams of having a large family. As he talked, the rigid set of his shoulders softened. "She would have loved this baby," he said finally. "That's the hardest part, knowing she's missing it all." "She's not missing it," Arya said, placing her hand over his. "She's part of this baby, part of Nathan, part of you." Lachlan looked at their hands, then slowly turned his palm up to clasp hers. "You're not what I expected, Araya Samuels." "Is that a good thing?" she asked, her heart beating faster. "I'm beginning to think it might be," he replied softly. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, they sat in comfortable silence, their hands still joined. And for the first time in years, both felt something they had almost forgotten: hope. But as the baby grew inside her, so did Araya's feelings for Lachlan and Nathan. And with those feelings came a growing dread of the day she would have to walk away from them both, and from the little girl she was carrying, who kicked whenever she heard Araya's voice. The contract was clear. Once the baby was born, Araya would receive the remainder of her payment and would have no further contact with the Reed family. She had given her word. And Araya Samuels always kept her promises, no matter how much it hurt. What she didn't know was that Lachlan Reed was facing his own growing conflict between the contract he had crafted and the feelings he had never planned to have again. Feelings for the woman carrying his child. Feelings that terrified him almost as much as they gave him hope. And as the pregnancy progressed, both Araya and Lachlan would be forced to confront the question: was this arrangement really just about a baby? Or had it become about something much more complex and much more precious? Life at the Reed estate settled into an unexpected rhythm as June turned to July. Araya, now almost 6 months pregnant, found herself becoming part of the household in ways she never anticipated. Each morning, Nathan would rush to her room, eager to say good morning to his sister, and each day Lachlan seemed to lower his guard a little more. "Miss Samuels, would you like more pancakes?" Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper, asked as they sat at breakfast. "Please call me Araya," she reminded the woman with a smile. "And yes, this little one is extra hungry today." Nathan giggled. "Daddy says the baby is growing big and strong." Lachlan looked up from his newspaper, a hint of softness in his eyes as he regarded Araya. "Dr. Hayes was pleased with yesterday's checkup. Everything is right on schedule." Araya nodded, remembering how Lachlan had held her hand during the ultrasound. It was becoming a habit, these small touches, these moments of connection that weren't in the contract. After breakfast, Araya visited Aunt Delia, who was comfortable in a sunny room overlooking the gardens. The nurses Lachlan had hired were attentive and kind. "You're glowing, child," Aunt Delia said, patting the space beside her on the bed. "And it's not just the pregnancy." Araya sat down carefully. "What do you mean?" "I see the way you look at him, and the way he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching." "Aunt Delia, it's not like that. It's a business arrangement." Her aunt raised an eyebrow. "Business doesn't make a man bring fresh flowers to your room every morning." Araya touched the daisies on the nightstand, simple, cheerful flowers that appeared each day with no note, no mention, just there, like a quiet acknowledgement. "He's just being considerate," Araya insisted, but her cheeks warmed. "Child, I've lived long enough to know when a man is falling in love, and when a woman is trying not to. Even if there were feelings, and I'm not saying there are, nothing could come of it. I signed a contract. Once this baby is born, I walk away. That's what we agreed to. Aunt Delia reached for her hand. Life has a way of changing our best laid plans. Just be honest with your heart, whatever happens. Later that afternoon, Araya sat in the nursery that was being prepared for the baby. The walls were a soft yellow, and fluffy clouds had been painted on the ceiling. She ran her fingers over the wooden crib, handcrafted, Lachlan had told her, by an artisan in Vermont. Do you like it? Lachlan's voice came from the doorway. Araya turned to see him leaning against the frame, his tie loosened after a day at the office. It's beautiful, she replied. She'll love growing up in this room. Lachlan entered, his hands in his pockets. I've been thinking about names. I'd like your input, if you're willing to give it. The request surprised her. How you want my opinion on your daughter's name? You're carrying her. You talk to her every day. It seems only right that you should have a say. Araya felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with the baby. I'd be honored. Do you have any ideas? Lachlan sat on the window seat across from her. I was thinking about Grace. Or maybe Lily. Both beautiful, Araya said softly. What about Hope? Lachlan's eyes met hers. Hope, he repeated, as if testing the sound. Why that name? Because that's what she's brought to this house, Araya said simply. I see it in Nathan's excitement, in the way you're planning for the future again. Something shifted in Lachlan's expression. And what has she brought to you, Araya? The question hung between them, loaded with unspoken meaning. Perspective, she finally answered. And complications I didn't expect. Lachlan leaned forward. What kind of complications? Before she could answer, Nathan burst into the room, breaking the tension. Daddy, can we have a picnic by the lake? Mrs. Winters says it's perfect weather. Lachlan glanced at Araya, a question in his eyes. A picnic sounds wonderful, she said, grateful for the interruption. The Reed estate included a small lake, complete with a wooden dock and rowboat. Mrs. Winters packed them a feast, fried chicken, potato salad, fresh fruit, and lemonade. As they spread the blanket under a sprawling oak tree, Araya felt an unexpected contentment. Nathan ran along the shore, collecting interesting rocks and bringing them for Araya's inspection. This one looks like a heart, he declared, placing a smooth stone in her palm. It's for my sister. That's very thoughtful, Nathan, she said, tucking the stone into her pocket. I'll keep it safe for her. Lachlan watched them, his expression unreadable. When Nathan ran off again, he moved closer to Araya. He's growing attached to you, he said quietly. Is that a problem? Araya asked, suddenly tense. Lachlan sighed. It wasn't part of the plan. When you leave, the words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I'll break his heart, Araya finished, her own heart aching. Yes. And what about you, Lachlan? She dared to ask. Will my leaving affect you at all? His eyes met hers, intense and troubled, more than it should. Before she could respond, Nathan called out, Daddy, look at the ducks. The moment passed, but something had shifted between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that were growing beyond their control. That evening, after Nathan had gone to bed, Araya found Lachlan in his study. He sat behind his desk, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring at a photograph. May I come in? She asked softly. He looked up, quickly setting the photo face down. Of course. Araya approached cautiously. I wanted to talk about today, about what you said. Lachlan took a sip of his whiskey. I shouldn't have said anything, it only complicates matters. I think they're already complicated, Araya said, gathering her courage. Lachlan, when I agreed to this arrangement, I never expected to feel anything for you or for Nathan. I certainly never expected to feel so attached to this baby. And yet, here we are, he said, his voice low. Yes, here we are. Araya placed a hand on her swollen belly. But the contract is clear. Once she's born, I leave. You've paid for a service, not for what, he prompted when she hesitated. Not for feelings, not for attachment, not for whatever this is between us. Lachlan stood and moved around the desk until he was facing her. And what is this, Araya? Because I've been asking myself that question for weeks now. I don't know, she whispered, but it scares me. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. It terrifies me. For a moment they stood in silence, the tension between them palpable. I should go, Araya finally said. Good night, Lachlan. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. It was Caroline's birthday today. Araya turned back. I'm so sorry, I didn't know. I've never told anyone, not even Nathan. Lachlan picked up the photograph he'd been looking at and held it out to her. It showed a beautiful woman with auburn hair and Lachlan's same blue eyes, laughing as she cradled a newborn Nathan. She was beautiful, Araya said softly. She was my whole world, Lachlan replied, his voice rough with emotion. "When she died, I thought I'd never feel anything again. I didn't want to. And now I find myself feeling things I never expected to feel again, for a baby I haven't met yet, and for a woman I was supposed to keep at arm's length." Araya's heart raced. "Lachlan, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I know what we agreed to. I know you're planning to leave once the baby is born. I just needed you to know." Araya nodded, unsure what to say. She returned to her room with her mind spinning and her heart torn. The next morning, Araya woke to find a single red rose beside her pillow. No note, no explanation, just like the daisies, but infinitely more meaningful. July turned to August, and as Araya entered her 7th month, the time came for her to officially move into the estate as stipulated in their contract. Since she and Aunt Delia were already there, it was a simple matter of making the arrangement formal. What wasn't simple were the growing feelings between Araya and Lachlan. Each day brought new moments of connection, his hand lingering on hers as he helped her from a chair, the way he remembered how she took her tea, the quiet conversations they shared after Nathan went to bed. One evening, a summer storm rolled in, bringing thunder that shook the windows. Araya found Nathan at her bedroom door, his stuffed elephant clutched tightly to his chest. "I'm scared," he whispered. "Can I stay with you?" "Of course, sweetie," she said, making room for him on the bed. As another crack of thunder sounded, Nathan burrowed against her side. "Will my sister be scared of storms too?" "Maybe," Araya replied, smoothing his hair. "But she'll have a brave big brother to protect her. And a brave daddy," Nathan added sleepily. "And you." Araya's heart clenched. "Nathan, remember that I won't be staying after your sister is born. I'm just helping your daddy until she arrives." Nathan frowned. "But why can't you stay? Don't you like us?" "I like you very much," Araya said, her throat tight. "But that was our agreement." "What's an agreement?" "It's like a promise," she explained, "and I always keep my promises." "But if Daddy said you could stay, would you?" Nathan asked, his eyes wide and hopeful. Before Araya could answer, a shadow fell across the doorway. Lachlan stood there, his expression unreadable. "Nathan, what are you doing out of bed?" he asked, his voice gentle. "The storm scared me," Nathan explained. "Araya said I could stay with her." Lachlan came into the room. "I think we should let Araya rest. You can come to my room tonight." Nathan looked disappointed but didn't argue. "Good night, Araya." "Good night, baby sister," he said, patting her belly before sliding off the bed. As Lachlan led his son out, he glanced back at Araya. "Good night," he said softly. "Good night," she replied, wondering if he had heard Nathan's question about her staying. The next day brought clear skies and humid heat. Araya spent the morning with Aunt Delia, whose condition had stabilized thanks to the excellent care she was receiving. "You're restless today," Aunt Delia observed. "What's troubling you, child?" Araya sighed. "I'm getting too attached, Auntie, to Nathan, to this baby, to Lachlan," her aunt finished for her. "Yes," Araya admitted, "and it's not fair to any of us. In less than 3 months, I'll give birth and walk away." "That's what I agreed to." "Sometimes the heart makes its own agreements," Aunt Delia said wisely. "Have you talked to him about how you feel? What would be the point? He lost the love of his life. I'm just the woman carrying his child. Once that's done, he won't need me anymore." Aunt Delia shook her head. "For someone so smart, you can be awfully blind. That man looks at you like you hung the moon and stars." "Even if that were true," Araya argued, "it doesn't change our arrangement." "Arrangements can be renegotiated," her aunt replied with a knowing smile. That afternoon, Araya decided to swim in the pool to ease the ache in her back. The doctor had recommended gentle exercise, and the cool water felt heavenly in the August heat. As she floated on her back, eyes closed against the sun, she heard footsteps on the pool deck. "Mind if I join you?" Lachlan asked. Araya opened her eyes to see him standing there in swim trunks, his chest bare. She'd never seen him so casual, so human. "It's your pool," she replied, trying to sound nonchalant despite the flutter in her chest. He slipped into the water and swam a few laps before coming to float beside her. "Nathan told me something interesting this morning," he said. Araya's heart skipped. "Oh?" "He said he asked you if you would stay if I asked you to." Araya kept her eyes on the sky. "Children say all sorts of things." "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. You came in before I could answer." Lachlan was quiet for a moment. "What would you have said?" Araya finally looked at him. "I don't know. It's not a question I ever expected to consider." "Consider it now," he said, his voice low and serious. Araya's pulse quickened. "What are you asking me, Lachlan?" "I'm not sure," he admitted. I just know that the thought of you walking away after the baby is born, it feels wrong. For Nathan, for the baby, for me. Arya stood in the shallow end, the water lapping around her shoulders. I signed a contract. Contracts can be amended, he said, moving closer, or torn up entirely. And replaced with what? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lachlan reached for her hand beneath the water. I don't know yet. I just know I'm not ready to let you go. The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. Lachlan, Don't answer now, he interrupted. Just think about it, please. Before she could respond, Mrs. Winters appeared on the pool deck. Mr. Reed, there's an urgent call from the New York office. Lachlan sighed. I'll be right there. He squeezed Arya's hand once before letting go. We'll talk more later. As he climbed out of the pool, Arya watched him go, her mind and heart in turmoil. That evening, Lachlan didn't return for dinner. Mrs. Winters explained that he had been called to the city for an emergency meeting. Nathan was subdued without his father, picking at his food. Is something wrong with your mac and cheese? Arya asked gently. I miss Daddy, he said sadly. He promised to read me a story tonight. I can read you a story, Arya offered. Nathan brightened a little. Can you do the voices like Daddy does? I'll try my very best, she promised. After dinner, Arya helped Nathan with his bath and then tucked him into bed. As she read Where the Wild Things Are, doing her best monster voices, she felt the baby kicking enthusiastically. She likes the story, Nathan exclaimed, feeling the movement. I think she likes hearing your laugh, Arya said, smiling. When the story was finished, Nathan looked up at her seriously. If you were my sister's mommy, would you stay with us forever? The innocent question hit Arya like a physical blow. Oh, Nathan, because I think you should be her mommy, he continued, oblivious to her distress. And maybe my mommy too. Daddy says my real mommy is in heaven, but maybe I could have two mommies. One in heaven and one here with us. Tears filled Arya's eyes. That's a very sweet thing to say, Nathan. But it's not that simple. Why not? Don't you love us? The question hung in the air, impossibly heavy for words spoken by a 5-year-old. I care about you very much, Arya said carefully. But your daddy and I have an agreement about the baby. The promise thing, Nathan nodded solemnly. But can't you make a new promise? A staying promise instead of a leaving promise? Arya kissed his forehead. It's time for sleep, sweetheart. Sweet dreams. As she turned off the light, Nathan's voice followed her. I'm going to ask Daddy to make you stay. The words echoed in her mind as she made her way back to her room. Would Lachlan really want her to stay? And in what capacity? As a nanny, a friend, something more? And what did she want? The answer came to her with startling clarity as she stood in the nursery, running her fingers over the crib that would soon hold Lachlan's daughter. She wanted to stay. She wanted to be part of this family. She had fallen in love, with Nathan, with the baby growing inside her, and with Lachlan Reed. But love wasn't part of their agreement. And Arya Samuels always kept her promises. The next morning, Arya woke to the news that Lachlan had been called to London on urgent business. He would be gone for at least a week. He left this for you, Mrs. Winters said, handing Arya an envelope. Inside was a brief note. We'll talk when I return. Take care of yourself and our daughter. Elle, our daughter. The words made Arya's heart leap. But what did they mean? Was it a slip of the pen or something more intentional? The week of Lachlan's absence stretched interminably. Arya spent her days with Nathan and Aunt Delia, trying not to count the hours until his return. The baby grew more active, as if sensing her mother's restlessness. On the 5th day, Arya received a call from Eleanor at Precious Beginnings. Ms. Samuels, I'm just checking in on your arrangement with Mr. Reed. We haven't received your monthly report. Arya had completely forgotten about the regular updates she was supposed to send to the agency. Everything is fine, she assured Eleanor. The pregnancy is progressing normally. Dr. Hayes is pleased with our progress. And the living arrangement at the Reed estate. Any issues there? Arya hesitated. No issues. Mr. Reed has been very accommodating. I'm glad to hear it, Eleanor said, her tone professional. Remember that our counselors are available if you need to discuss any emotional concerns as the birth approaches. Many surrogates find the final months challenging as they prepare for separation. The word separation hit Arya like a slap. Thank you. I'll keep that in mind. After hanging up, Arya sat on the edge of her bed, suddenly overwhelmed. What was she doing? Allowing herself to dream of a future with Lachlan and Nathan when the entire arrangement was built on her walking away. She went to find Nathan, needing the comfort of his innocent enthusiasm. She found him in the playroom with his nanny, building an elaborate tower with blocks. "Aria," he exclaimed when he saw her, "look what I made for my sister. It's a castle where she can be a princess." "It's beautiful, Nathan," she said, her voice thick with unshed tears. The nanny, sensing Aria's emotion, tactfully excused herself to prepare Nathan's lunch. "Are you sad?" Nathan asked, climbing into her lap as best he could with her pregnant belly in the way. "A little bit," Aria admitted. "Is it because Daddy is gone? He'll be back soon, he promised." "I know he will." Nathan looked up at her with those solemn blue eyes that were so like his father's. "When my sister comes out of your tummy, will you be happy again?" Aria stroked his hair. "Nathan, there's something I need to explain to you. When your sister is born, I won't be living here anymore." His lower lip trembled. "But why? Don't you like us?" "I like you very, very much," Aria said, her heart breaking. "But your daddy and I made an agreement before your sister was even in my tummy. I promised to help bring her into the world, and then I would go back to my own life." "But this is your life now," Nathan insisted, "with me and Daddy and the baby." "Oh, sweetheart." Aria pulled him close, her tears finally spilling over. "You have such a big heart." "Daddy says you have a big heart too," Nathan said. "He told me that's why he—" "Why he what?" Aria prompted when he stopped. Nathan looked suddenly guilty. "It's a secret. Daddy made me promise not to tell." "That's okay," Aria said, curiosity burning within her. "You should keep your promises." That night, Aria couldn't sleep. She wandered the quiet house, eventually finding herself in the nursery again. The moonlight streamed through the windows, casting silver light across the empty crib. "I never wanted to give away a piece of myself," she whispered, her hand on her belly where the baby, Lachlan's daughter, her daughter in all but name, slept. "But I promised, and I always keep my word. Even if keeping that word breaks your heart?" Aria whirled around to find Lachlan standing in the doorway, his suit rumpled from travel, his eyes tired but intent. "Lachlan, you're back early." "I couldn't stay away," he said simply, stepping into the room. "Not when everything that matters to me is here." Aria's heart pounded. "Nathan will be so happy to see you in the morning." "And you?" Lachlan asked, moving closer. "Are you happy to see me?" "Yes," she admitted, unable to lie. He reached for her hand. "I've been doing a lot of thinking this past week, about the future, about what I want for Nathan, for the baby, for myself." "And what is that?" Aria asked, hardly daring to hope. "A family," he said simply. "A real one. Not just a father and his children, but a home filled with love. The kind of home Caroline and I dreamed of building." Aria's heart sank. Of course he was still thinking of Caroline. "I'm sure you'll find that someday." "I already have," Lachlan said, lifting her chin so she had to meet his gaze. "Aria, when I hired you as a surrogate, I was looking for a solution to a problem. I wanted a daughter, a sibling for Nathan, a completion of the family I had started with Caroline. What I never expected was to find someone who would make me question everything." "What are you saying?" Aria whispered. "I'm saying that the contract we signed doesn't reflect what I want anymore, what I hope you might want too." "And what is that?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Lachlan took a deep breath. "I want you to stay. Not as our baby's surrogate, but as her mother, as part of our family, part of my life." Aria stared at him, stunned. "Lachlan, you can't possibly—" "I can," he interrupted. "I've never been more certain of anything. When Caroline died, I thought that part of my life was over. I never planned to love again. But then you walked into my office with your direct questions and your concern for a baby you hadn't even carried yet, and something changed." "This is the hormones talking," Aria protested weakly. "Pregnancy creates all sorts of emotional responses." "This isn't about the pregnancy," Lachlan insisted. "It's about you. The way you talk to Nathan, the way you challenge me, the way you've brought life back into this house." He placed his hand on her belly, and as if on cue, the baby kicked against his palm. "See, even she agrees," he said with a small smile. "What exactly are you proposing?" Aria asked, needing clarity. "I'm proposing we tear up the contract. I'm proposing you stay, not as a surrogate, but as this baby's mother in every sense of the word. I'm proposing we see where this feeling between us leads." He paused, his eyes never leaving hers. "I'm proposing a new beginning, Aria, for all of us." Aria's mind raced. "What about your feelings for Caroline?" "I will always love Caroline," Lachlan said honestly. "She gave me Nathan. She was my first love. But that doesn't mean there isn't room in my heart for someone new, someone who has shown me that it's possible to feel again." Aria felt tears streaming down her face. I never expected this. Any of it. Neither did I, Lachlan admitted. But sometimes the best things in life are the ones we don't plan for. He leaned forward, his intention clear. Araya closed her eyes as his lips met hers in a gentle, questioning kiss. When he pulled back, his eyes searched hers. "Stay," he whispered, "not because of a contract, but because you want to." Before Araya could respond, a small voice came from the doorway. "Daddy, are you asking Araya to be my sister's mommy?" They turned to see Nathan standing there in his pajamas, his stuffed elephant dangling from one hand. Lachlan smiled at his son. "Yes, Nathan, I am." "And to be my mommy too?" the boy asked hopefully. Lachlan looked at Araya, the question in his eyes. That would be up to Araya. Nathan ran to them, wrapping his arms around Araya's legs. "Please say yes, please, please, please." Araya looked from Nathan's hopeful face to Lachlan's intent one. Everything she had ever wanted, a family, love, belonging, was being offered to her. All she had to do was say yes. But the contract, the money, the clear agreement that she would walk away. "I need time to think," she said finally. "This is a big decision." Lachlan nodded, though disappointment flickered in his eyes. "Of course. Take all the time you need." As August turned to September, Araya wrestled with the most important decision of her life. Stay with Lachlan and Nathan, becoming a true mother to the baby she carried, or honor the contract she had signed, take the money that had already saved Aunt Delia's life, and walk away from the family that had captured her heart. Lachlan was patient, never pressuring her for an answer, but she could see the question in his eyes every time they were together, and she could feel the answer in her heart, growing stronger with each passing day. What she didn't know was that fate was about to make the decision much more complicated and much more urgent than either of them had anticipated. The September air turned crisp as autumn settled over Connecticut. Araya, now 8 months pregnant, found herself nesting instinctively, arranging and rearranging the nursery, washing and folding tiny clothes, preparing for a baby she still wasn't sure would be hers to mother. Lachlan had been true to his word, giving her space to make her decision. But the waiting was clearly wearing on him. She would catch him watching her with a mixture of hope and fear in his eyes. Nathan, less patient than his father, asked her daily if she had decided to stay forever and ever. On a golden Saturday afternoon, Araya sat with Aunt Delia in the garden, watching the leaves begin their transformation from green to gold. "You're still torturing yourself with this decision," Aunt Delia observed, adjusting the blanket over her legs. Her health had improved remarkably in the months they'd been at the Reed estate, but she still tired easily. "I just want to be sure," Araya replied, her hand resting on her rounded belly. "This isn't just about me anymore." "It never was," her aunt pointed out. "But let me ask you something. What's really holding you back? Is it the contract, the money, or are you afraid?" Araya considered the question. "Maybe all three. The contract was clear. The money, well, we needed it for your treatment, and now my treatment is working. And that man is offering you something worth far more than money." Aunt Delia reached for Araya's hand. "So I think it's fear that's truly stopping you." "What if it doesn't work out?" Araya whispered. "What if he's still in love with Caroline? What if I'm just a convenient solution for his children?" "Child, there are no guarantees in love. There never have been." Aunt Delia's voice was gentle but firm. "But I've seen the way that man looks at you. That's not convenience. That's a man who's found something he thought he'd lost forever." Before Araya could respond, Mrs. Winters appeared in the garden. "Ms. Samuels, there's a call for you. It's from Precious Beginnings." Arya felt a flutter of unease. She hadn't spoken to Eleanor since that brief check-in weeks ago. "I'll take it in the study." In Lachlan's wood-paneled study, Arya picked up the phone. "This is Araya Samuels." "Ms. Samuels, this is Eleanor Winters from Precious Beginnings. I'm calling because we've noticed some irregularities in your arrangement with Mr. Reed." Araya's pulse quickened. "What kind of irregularities?" "We've received reports suggesting that the relationship between you and Mr. Reed has become personal rather than professional. Is that true?" "Who told you that?" Araya demanded, though she already had a suspicion. "That's confidential," Eleanor replied coolly. "But I should remind you that your contract explicitly prohibits romantic involvement with the client. Such a breach could nullify the agreement entirely." "Meaning what, exactly?" "Meaning you would be required to return all payments made to date, and Mr. Reed would have no financial obligations to you post-delivery." Eleanor's voice hardened. "Additionally, it could complicate the legal custody arrangements for the child." Araya felt her blood run cold. Are you threatening me, Ms. Winters? Not at all. I'm simply reminding you of the terms you agreed to. Mr. Reed signed a contract for surrogacy services, not for a relationship. The way she said the word made it sound distasteful, inappropriate. I understand, Aria said stiffly. Is there anything else? Just that we'll be monitoring the situation closely. Good day, Ms. Samuels. Aria hung up, her mind racing. Who had reported them to the agency? And what did this mean for her future, for all their futures? She was still sitting in Lachlan's chair when he returned from taking Nathan to his Saturday soccer practice. Aria, he said, surprised to find her in his study. Is everything all right? One look at her face told him it wasn't. What's happened? He asked, kneeling beside the chair. I just got a call from Precious Beginnings. Someone told them about us, about our changing relationship. They're saying it violates the contract. Lachlan's expression darkened. Let me guess. If you don't stick to the original agreement, you have to return all the money. Aria nodded. How did you know? Because I've been getting similar pressure from an unexpected source. He stood and paced the room. My brother-in-law, Caroline's brother, has been hinting that he has concerns about my inappropriate relationship with the surrogate. His words, not mine. Andrew? Aria was surprised. Caroline's brother had visited the estate only once since she'd been there, and he'd seemed polite if somewhat cold. Yes, he's Nathan's only blood relative on Caroline's side, and he's always been involved in our lives. Too involved sometimes. Lachlan ran a hand through his hair. I think he's the one who contacted the agency. But why would he care if we... Money, Lachlan said flatly. Caroline's family money is in a trust for Nathan. Andrew is the trustee until Nathan turns 21. If I were to remarry, certain financial arrangements would change. Aria felt sick. So this is all about control. It always has been with Andrew. Lachlan sat on the edge of his desk. But that doesn't matter. What matters is what you want, Aria, the contract, the money, Andrew. Those are all problems we can solve together, if you want to. His eyes held a question, one he'd been patient enough not to ask directly until now. Lachlan, Aria began, but was interrupted by Nathan bursting into the study. Daddy, Aria, Mrs. Winters made cookies. The moment broken, Lachlan smiled at his son. Did she? Well, we'd better not keep them waiting. As they followed Nathan to the kitchen, Lachlan whispered, We'll talk more later. But later never came. That evening, as they were preparing for a quiet family dinner, Andrew Jennings arrived unannounced at the estate. Andrew, Lachlan greeted him with thinly veiled irritation. What brings you here? Caroline's brother was a handsome man in his 40s, with the same auburn hair his sister had had, though his eyes lacked the warmth Aria had seen in photographs of Caroline. Can't an uncle visit his nephew? Andrew asked with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Hello, Nathan. Nathan dutifully hugged his uncle, though Aria noticed he didn't show the same enthusiasm he usually did with visitors. And you must be the surrogate, Andrew said, turning to Aria with a cool assessment. I don't believe we were properly introduced when I visited earlier this summer. Aria Samuels, she said, extending her hand. Andrew shook it briefly. Fascinating arrangement, surrogacy. So transactional, but effective, I suppose, for certain situations. The contempt in his voice was barely disguised. Aria felt Lachlan tense beside her. Nathan, why don't you go help Mrs. Winters set the table, Lachlan suggested. We'll be along in a minute. Once Nathan was out of earshot, Lachlan's demeanor changed. Why are you really here, Andrew? To protect my nephew's interests, of course. Andrew helped himself to a drink from the bar cart without asking. And to remind you of certain obligations. Nathan is well taken care of, Lachlan said, his voice tight. As he always has been. Is he? Andrew swirled his drink. I wonder what my sister would think of you replacing her so quickly. With the hired help, no less. Aria flinched at the insult, but Lachlan stepped forward, his face thunderous. That's enough, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. You're a guest in my home, Andrew. Remember that. Andrew smiled thinly. Of course. My apologies, Miss Samuels. No offense intended. I'm simply concerned about my nephew's well-being and about the proper handling of his inheritance. Nathan's inheritance is secure, Lachlan said, as you well know. As long as certain conditions are met, Andrew replied. Conditions my sister was quite specific about in her will. Aria looked between the two men, sensing a long-standing tension. Perhaps I should check on Nathan, she said, wanting to escape the charged atmosphere. An excellent idea, Andrew said with false brightness. Family matters can be so tedious for outsiders. As Aria left the room, she heard Lachlan say, "She's not an outsider, Andrew, not anymore." In the dining room, Nathan was carefully placing forks beside each plate. "Is Uncle Andrew staying for dinner?" he asked, his voice small. "I think so, sweetheart," Aria replied, helping him with the napkins. "I don't like when he visits," Nathan confided. "He makes Daddy angry. Sometimes grown-ups disagree," Aria said diplomatically. "But your daddy loves you very much, and so does your uncle in his own way." Nathan looked unconvinced. "Uncle Andrew said my mommy wouldn't like you, but that's not true. Mommy would love you because you make Daddy smile again. That's what Mrs. Winters told me." Aria's heart squeezed. Mrs. Winters is very wise. Dinner was a tense affair. Andrew dominated the conversation with pointed comments about Caroline, reminiscing about how wonderful she had been and how irreplaceable she was. Lachlan grew increasingly rigid, while Nathan pushed his food around his plate without eating much. "And the nursery," Andrew was saying. "Caroline designed it so beautifully for Nathan. I assume you've done something similar for the new baby, Lachlan." "Actually," Lachlan replied, his eyes meeting Aria's across the table. "Aria had quite a bit of input on the nursery design." Andrew's eyebrows rose. "Did she? How unusual for a surrogate to be so involved." "Aria isn't just a surrogate," Nathan piped up. "She's going to be my sister's mommy and my mommy too if she says yes." The silence that followed was deafening. Andrew's face flushed dark red, while Lachlan closed his eyes briefly, as if bracing for impact. "Is that so?" Andrew finally said, his voice dangerously soft. "Well, isn't that interesting?" "Nathan, it's past your bedtime," Lachlan said firmly. "Please say goodnight to your uncle." "But Daddy—" "Now, Nathan." The boy sighed but obediently slid from his chair. "Good night, Uncle Andrew." "Good night, nephew," Andrew replied, his eyes never leaving Lachlan's face. "Sweet dreams." Once Nathan had left with Mrs. Winters, Andrew set down his fork with deliberate care. "So, the rumors are true," he said. "You're planning to make the surrogate a permanent fixture. How very modern of you, Lachlan. My personal life is none of your concern, Andrew. It is when it affects my nephew and his inheritance." Andrew leaned forward. "Perhaps you've forgotten the terms of Caroline's trust. If you remarry, control of Nathan's inheritance passes from me to you and your new wife. Quite a convenient arrangement for you, isn't it?" "That has nothing to do with my feelings for Aria," Lachlan said, his voice tight with anger. "Doesn't it?" Andrew turned his cold gaze to Aria. "Ms. Samuels, did you know that by marrying Lachlan you would gain control of a trust worth over $20 million? Aria's eyes widened. "No, I didn't. And I don't care." Andrew laughed. "How noble. But then, you're already being well compensated for your services, aren't you? $200,000 to carry a child, wasn't it? Quite a profitable venture." "That's enough." Lachlan stood, his hands flat on the table. "You've insulted my guest and overstepped your bounds, Andrew. I think it's time for you to leave." Andrew rose slowly. "I'll go. But this isn't over, Lachlan. Caroline made me promise to look after Nathan's interests, and I intend to honor that promise, even if it means taking legal action." "Legal action?" Aria echoed, alarmed. "Oh yes," Andrew smiled coldly. "There are provisions in Caroline's will about Nathan's upbringing, about maintaining connections to her family, about the moral character of those who influence him. I wonder how a judge would view your rather unconventional arrangement. Are you threatening to try to take Nathan from me?" Lachlan's voice was deadly quiet. "I'm simply pointing out that actions have consequences," Andrew replied, "especially impulsive ones driven by baser instincts." He nodded to Aria. "Miss Samuels, I suggest you consider very carefully what you're getting involved in. This isn't just about romance. This is about a legacy, a family name, and a substantial fortune. Are you prepared for what that entails?" Without waiting for an answer, he turned and left, the sound of the front door closing behind him echoing through the silent house. Lachlan sank back into his chair, his face pale with fury. "I'm sorry you had to witness that. Has he always been this way?" Aria asked. "Andrew has always been controlling, especially when it comes to his sister's legacy. But this is a new low, even for him." Lachlan ran a hand over his face. "He's desperate. The thought of losing control of the trust terrifies him. Would he really try to take Nathan from you?" "He might try. He wouldn't succeed." Lachlan reached across the table for her hand. "Aria, please don't let Andrew's threats influence your decision. Whatever you choose, I can handle Andrew. But what if he's right? What if all of this us ends up hurting Nathan somehow?" "Nathan loves you," Lachlan said simply. "You've brought joy back into his life, into both our lives." "Andrew is the one who would hurt Nathan, not you," Araya squeezed his hand. I need to think. This is all so complicated now. Lachlan nodded. Take all the time you need, but know this. Andrew, the contract, the money, none of that changes how I feel about you. That night, Araya couldn't sleep. She paced her room, her mind racing with Andrew's threats and the implications for everyone she had come to care about. The baby seemed to sense her distress, kicking and shifting restlessly. What should I do, little one? She whispered, stroking her belly. What's best for you? For Nathan, for all of us? A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Nathan standing there in his pajamas, clutching his stuffed elephant. I had a bad dream, he said, his lower lip trembling. Can I stay with you? Of course, sweetheart, Araya said, leading him to her bed. Do you want to talk about your dream? Nathan climbed under the covers and curled against her side as best he could, with her pregnant belly between them. I dreamed you went away and never came back, and Daddy was sad again, like before you came, and my sister was crying for you. Araya's heart clenched. Oh, Nathan, you're not going to leave us, are you? He asked, his blue eyes wide and worried in the moonlight. Uncle Andrew can't make you go away, can he? No one can make me do anything I don't want to do, Araya assured him, stroking his hair. Not Uncle Andrew, not anyone. So you'll stay? Forever? Araya hesitated. Nathan, it's complicated. There are grown-up things to consider. Do you love us? He asked simply. The question, so direct and innocent, cut through all the complications. Yes, Araya admitted, realizing the truth of it as she spoke. I love you very much. And Daddy too? Araya smiled. Yes, your Daddy too. Then what's complicated? Nathan frowned. When people love each other, they stay together. That's what families do. Out of the mouths of babes, Araya thought. You're very wise for 5 years old, you know that? Nathan smiled sleepily. Daddy says I'm smart like my mommy was. I'm sure that's true. As Nathan drifted off to sleep beside her, Araya felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. Love wasn't always simple, but it was worth fighting for. And this family, Lachlan, Nathan, and the baby girl she carried, was worth fighting for. The next morning, Araya woke with a decision in her heart. She would stay. She would face Andrew's threats, the contract complications, all of it, because what she had found with Lachlan and Nathan was too precious to walk away from. She gently extracted herself from a still sleeping Nathan and went in search of Lachlan. She found him in his study, already dressed and working despite the early hour. Lachlan, she said from the doorway. He looked up, his face lighting up at the sight of her. Good morning. I've made my decision, she said, crossing the room to stand before him. Lachlan stood, hope and fear warring in his eyes. And I want to stay, Araya said simply. With you, with Nathan, with our daughter. The joy that broke across Lachlan's face was like sunrise after the longest night. Are you sure? After everything Andrew said? I'm sure, Araya interrupted. I love you, Lachlan Reed. I love Nathan. And I love this baby we're having together. The rest, the contract, the money, Andrew, we'll figure it out. Lachlan pulled her into his arms, as close as her pregnant belly would allow. I love you, Araya Samuels. I never thought I'd say those words to anyone again, but I love you with all my heart. Their kiss was sweet and full of promise, a sealing of their commitment to each other and to the family they were building. Yay! Came a small voice from the doorway. Nathan stood there in his rumpled pajamas, beaming. Does this mean Araya is staying forever, and she'll be my sister's mommy, and my mommy too? Lachlan laughed, extending an arm to include his son in their embrace. If that's what Araya wants, and what you want, then yes. It's exactly what I want, Araya assured him, her heart so full she thought it might burst. The three of them stood there, arms around each other, a family already in every way that mattered. What happens now? Araya asked as they finally broke apart. Now we make it official, Lachlan said. I'll call my lawyer today. We'll tear up the surrogacy contract and draft new papers. Parental rights for you, for our daughter. And then, if you're willing, marriage. Marriage? Araya echoed, stunned at how quickly things were moving. Not right away, Lachlan clarified. We can take our time with that part. But I want you to know that's where I see this going. A real family, in every sense. And what about Andrew? The agency? Lachlan's expression hardened. Let me worry about Andrew. As for the agency, once we terminate the contract officially, they'll have no say in our lives. But the money, Araya said, thinking of Aunt Delia's treatments. If the contract is voided, I'll have to return what they've paid me. I'll cover it, Lachlan said immediately. Your aunt's care won't be affected, I promise. Araya shook her head. I can't let you do that. It's too much. Araya, Lachlan took her hands in his. What's mine is yours now. We're in this together. All of it. Before she could argue further, Mrs. Winters appeared in the doorway, her face pinched with worry. Mr. Reed, there's a call for Miss Samuels. It's the hospital. Her aunt has had some kind of episode. Aria's blood ran cold. What kind of episode? Is she okay? They wouldn't say over the phone, Mrs. Winters replied. Just that you should come quickly. The next hours passed in a blur. Lachlan drove Araya to the hospital, Nathan in tow because there wasn't time to arrange for the nanny. They found Aunt Delia in the ICU, unconscious and surrounded by machines. She had a stroke, Dr. Mercer explained gently. A severe one. We've stabilized her for now, but the next 24 hours will be critical. Araya sank into a chair, one hand protectively covering her belly. But she was doing so well. The new treatments were working. Sometimes these things happen despite our best efforts, the doctor said. I'm very sorry. Lachlan knelt beside her chair. What can we do? Wait, Dr. Mercer replied, and hope. For the next 2 days, Araya barely left Aunt Delia's bedside. Lachlan brought her meals, sat with her during the long hours, and took Nathan home at night only to return early the next morning. On the 3rd day, Aunt Delia opened her eyes. Auntie? Araya said, tears of relief flooding her eyes. Can you hear me? Aunt Delia couldn't speak. The stroke had affected the language center of her brain, but she squeezed Araya's hand weakly. You're going to be okay, Araya promised, though the doctors had been less optimistic. I'm right here. Over the next week, Aunt Delia showed small improvements. She could nod or shake her head to answer simple questions. She recognized Araya, Lachlan, and even Nathan, who drew pictures for her that Araya taped to the hospital walls. But the doctors were clear. Aunt Delia would need intensive rehabilitation and round-the-clock care for the foreseeable future. The costs would be astronomical, far beyond what insurance would cover. We'll manage, Lachlan assured Araya when the financial counselor left them with a stack of forms. Together. Araya nodded, but worry gnawed at her. How could she accept Lachlan's help without feeling like a burden? How could she build a new life with him while caring for Aunt Delia? As if reading her thoughts, Lachlan said, Your aunt is family now, Araya. Just like you. Just like our daughter. We take care of family. The sincerity in his eyes brought fresh tears to hers. Thank you, she whispered. That night, as they drove back to the estate, Araya felt a strange sensation, a tightening across her belly that took her breath away. Lachlan, she gasped, clutching the dashboard. Something's wrong. He glanced at her, alarmed. The baby? I don't know. It feels like, pressure. Lachlan immediately turned the car around, heading back toward the hospital. Hang on, we're only 10 minutes away. But in less than 5 minutes, Araya felt a gush of warm fluid between her legs. My water broke, she said, panic rising in her voice. It's too soon. I'm only 34 weeks. It's going to be okay, Lachlan said, though his white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel betrayed his own fear. Lots of babies are born at 34 weeks and do fine. By the time they reached the hospital, Araya's contractions were coming every few minutes. Dr. Hayes was called, and Araya was rushed to the maternity ward. The baby is in distress, Dr. Hayes said after examining her. The heart rate is dropping with each contraction. We need to do an emergency C-section. But Aunt Delia, Araya protested weakly. I need to tell her. I'll tell her, Lachlan promised. Focus on you and our daughter now. As they prepared Araya for surgery, Lachlan was given scrubs to wear so he could be in the operating room. Before they wheeled her away, he leaned down and pressed a kiss to her forehead. I love you, he said fiercely. Both of you, and we're going to get through this together. The operating room was bright and cold. Araya felt tugging sensations, but no pain, as Dr. Hayes worked quickly behind the surgical drape. Lachlan sat by her head, holding her hand tightly. Almost there, Dr. Hayes said. Dad, get ready to meet your daughter. A moment later, a thin cry filled the room. Lachlan's eyes filled with tears as the nurses quickly wrapped the tiny baby in a blanket. Is she okay? Araya asked anxiously. She's so small. 5 pounds, 4 ounces, a nurse announced. Good size for 34 weeks. They placed the baby on Araya's chest for just a moment. A tiny, red-faced miracle with a dusting of dark hair. Hello, little one, Araya whispered, love overwhelming her. She's perfect, Lachlan said, his voice choked with emotion. Just like her mother. But the moment was brief. We need to take her to the NICU for assessment, the nurse explained. lifting the baby from Araya's chest. Premature babies need extra monitoring. As they took the baby away, Araya felt a sudden wave of dizziness. The room seemed to tilt, and Lachlan's concerned face above her began to blur. "Araya?" His voice sounded far away. "Blood pressure dropping," she heard someone say urgently. "She's hemorrhaging." The last thing Araya heard before darkness claimed her was Lachlan's voice, desperate and afraid. "Don't leave me, Araya. Please don't leave me." And then nothing. Araya floated in darkness, vague impressions coming and going, voices she couldn't quite understand, a steady beeping sound, pain, distant but persistent. And then, gradually, consciousness returned. She opened her eyes to find herself in a hospital room, monitors beeping beside her. Lachlan was slumped in a chair next to the bed, his head in his hands. "Lachlan?" Her voice was barely a whisper. His head snapped up, eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion and relief. "Arya, thank God." "The baby?" she asked immediately. "She's doing well," he assured her, taking her hand. "Small but mighty, the nurses say. She's breathing on her own." "What happened to me?" Lachlan's face grew serious. "You had a postpartum hemorrhage. They had to perform an emergency hysterectomy to stop the bleeding. You've been unconscious for nearly 2 days. Araya took a moment to absorb this. "So I can't have any more children?" "No," Lachlan confirmed gently. "I'm so sorry, Araya." She squeezed his hand. "Don't be. Our daughter is here and healthy, that's all that matters." A thought struck her. "Aunt Delia, does she know?" "She knows." Lachlan smiled slightly. "I wheeled her in to see you yesterday. The nurses bent a few rules for us." Tears filled Araya's eyes. "Can I see the baby?" "I'll ask the nurses if we can bring her down from the NICU," Lachlan said, kissing her forehead before stepping out of the room. While he was gone, Araya took stock of her situation. She had nearly died giving birth, just like Caroline. The irony wasn't lost on her, but unlike Lachlan's first wife, she had survived. And now she had a daughter, a future with the man she loved, and a chance at the family she had always dreamed of. Lachlan returned with a nurse who was wheeling a small incubator. "Someone wants to meet her mommy," the nurse said kindly. They carefully transferred the tiny baby to Araya's arms. She was small but perfect, delicate features, Lachlan's blue eyes, and a surprising amount of dark, curly hair like Araya's own. "She's beautiful," Araya whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Absolutely beautiful." Lachlan sat on the edge of the bed, his arm around Araya's shoulders, gazing down at their daughter with pure adoration. "Have you thought of a name?" Araya asked him. "I was waiting for you," Lachlan replied, "but I did have an idea." "Tell me." "Hope," he said simply. "You were right. That's what she's brought to all of us." Araya smiled through her tears. "Hope, Reed. It's perfect." Actually, Lachlan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I was thinking Hope Reed Samuels, or just Hope Samuels Reed if you prefer." He opened the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring. "I know this isn't the romantic proposal I planned, and I know we agreed to take things slowly, but these past 2 days, thinking I might lose you, I realized there's no point in waiting. Life is too precious, too fragile." Arya stared at the ring, then at the man holding it, and finally at the baby in her arms. Their daughter, the physical embodiment of the love that had grown between them. "Arya Samuels," Lachlan said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Will you marry me? Will you be my wife, Hope's mother, and the heart of our family?" Before Araya could answer, there was a commotion at the door. Andrew stood there, his face thunderous. "So it's true," he said coldly. "You didn't even wait until she recovered to push this arrangement." Lachlan stood, shielding Araya and the baby. "This isn't the time or place, Andrew." "On the contrary," Andrew replied, stepping into the room uninvited. "This is exactly the right time, before things go any further." He turned his gaze to Araya. "Did he tell you about the call from Precious Beginnings? About the legal implications of breaching your contract? About the custody issues that could arise?" "Andrew, stop," Lachlan warned. But Andrew wasn't finished. "Did he mention that if you marry him, you'll have control of Nathan's trust? $20 million is quite a motivation to say yes, isn't it? Almost makes the near-death experience worth it." Araya gasped at the cruelty of his words. The baby in her arms began to cry, sensing the tension. "Get out," Lachlan said, his voice deadly quiet. "Get out before I have security remove you." Andrew smirked. "I've already spoken to my lawyers. The surrogacy contract was breached the moment you two became romantically involved. That means the baby's legal status is in question. And as for Nathan, I'll be filing for a review of the custody arrangements in light of your Questionable judgment. You would put your own nephew through a custody battle, Araya asked, appalled, just to maintain control of his money? It's not about the money, Andrew insisted, though his eyes said otherwise. It's about what Caroline would have wanted, and she wouldn't have wanted her son raised by a woman who sold her womb to the highest bidder. Lachlan moved so quickly that neither Araya nor Andrew saw it coming. In an instant, he had Andrew pinned against the wall, his forearm across the other man's throat. You will never speak about Araya that way again, Lachlan growled. Never. Lachlan, don't, Araya pleaded, clutching Hope protectively. He's not worth it. Lachlan released Andrew, who straightened his jacket with affected dignity. This isn't over, he promised, before turning and leaving the room. Lachlan returned to Araya's side, his hands shaking with barely contained rage. I'm sorry you had to witness that. Again. What will he do? Araya asked, her voice trembling. Nothing that will succeed, Lachlan assured her, but he'll try to make things difficult. Legal challenges, delays, accusations. It's his way. And the baby? Our daughter. Could he really challenge her custody? Lachlan took Hope's tiny hand in his. Legally, you're her biological mother. I'm her biological father. Andrew has no claim to her, but he could try to make things difficult for us, use the broken surrogacy contract as leverage. So what do we do? Araya asked, looking down at their daughter's peaceful face. We fight, Lachlan said simply. Together, and in the meantime, we don't let him steal our joy. He picked up the ring box that had fallen to the bed during Andrew's interruption. You never answered my question. Despite everything, the fear, the pain, the uncertainty, Araya felt a smile spread across her face. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you, Lachlan Reed. His face lit up with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It was slightly too big. He'd had to guess her size. But to Araya, it was perfect. I love you, he whispered, leaning down to kiss her gently. I love you too, she replied. All of you, Nathan, and Hope, my family. The word felt right, felt true in a way nothing else ever had. A soft knock at the door interrupted their moment. A nurse peeked in. There's a young visitor here to see the baby. Says he's the big brother. Nathan peeked around the nurse, his eyes wide with excitement. Mrs. Winters stood behind him, smiling apologetically. He couldn't wait another minute, she explained. Come in, Nathan, Araya called, adjusting Hope in her arms so the boy could see. Nathan approached the bed cautiously, climbing up when Lachlan lifted him. He stared at the tiny baby in wonder. She's so small, he whispered. But strong, Lachlan told him. Like her mother. Nathan reached out a careful finger to touch Hope's cheek. Hi, sister. I'm your big brother, Nathan. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Araya and Lachlan exchanged a look over their children's heads, a look full of love, hope, and determination. Whatever challenges Andrew might throw their way, they would face them together, as a family. What they didn't know was that Andrew had already set his plan in motion, a plan that would test their newfound happiness in ways they couldn't imagine. And as Araya held her daughter in one arm and clasped Lachlan's hand with the other, the future, both its promises and its threats, waited just beyond the hospital doors. 3 weeks passed in a blur of hospital rooms, doctor's visits, and sleepless nights. Hope grew stronger daily in the NICU, while Araya recovered from her surgery and blood loss. Aunt Delia remained in the rehabilitation wing, making slow but steady progress with her speech therapy. She's ready to go home, Dr. Hayes announced during their morning checkup, smiling down at Hope. She's reached 5.5 pounds, her breathing is perfect, and she's feeding well. You can take her home tomorrow. Araya, who had been discharged a week earlier but spent every day at the hospital with Hope, felt tears of joy spring to her eyes. Really? She's ready? She's more than ready, the doctor assured her. You've got a fighter on your hands. Lachlan, who had rearranged his entire work schedule to be with Araya and Hope as much as possible, squeezed Araya's hand. Just like her mother, that evening, as they prepared to bring Hope home the next day, Lachlan's lawyer, Michael Brennan, arrived at the estate for a meeting. How bad is it? Lachlan asked once they were settled in his study. Michael looked grim. Andrew isn't wasting any time. He's filed a petition challenging your fitness as Nathan's guardian, citing moral turpitude and compromised judgment. He's also filed a separate motion regarding the baby, claiming the surrogacy contract was invalid and raising questions about legal parentage. Araya felt sick. Can he do that? Challenge Hope's parentage? He can try, Michael replied, but it's a weak case. Biologically, she's yours and Lachlan's. The surrogacy contract complicates things slightly, but the fact that you two are now engaged and planning to raise her together makes it pretty clear to any reasonable judge what's in the child's best interest. And Nathan? Lachlan asked, his voice tight. Michael's expression darkened. That's more complicated. Andrew is Caroline's brother, and there are provisions in her will about maintaining ties to her family. He's leveraging those, plus claiming that your relationship with Aria shows poor judgment that puts Nathan at risk. That's ridiculous, Aria protested. Nathan is thriving. He's happier than he's been in years, according to Mrs. Winters. And we'll make that case, Michael assured her. But you should be prepared for an ugly fight. Andrew is well connected in this town. He's already spreading rumors, making insinuations about how your relationship began. So what do we do? Lachlan asked, pacing the study. First, we counterfile, asserting your rights as Hope's biological parents. Second, we prepare a strong case demonstrating your fitness as Nathan's father and the positive impact Aria has had on his life. And third, Michael looked pointedly at the engagement ring on Aria's finger. We move up the wedding. Move it up? Aria echoed. We haven't even set a date yet. The sooner you're legally married, the stronger your position as a family unit, Michael explained. It demonstrates commitment and stability, exactly what Andrew is trying to claim you lack. Lachlan sat beside Aria on the sofa. What do you think? We don't have to rush if you're not ready. Aria thought about Nathan, about Hope, about the threat Andrew posed to their happiness. How soon were you thinking? Next week, Michael suggested. Small, private ceremony. Just family and a few close friends as witnesses. Aria looked at Lachlan, searching his face for any sign of doubt. She found none, only love and determination. Next week, she agreed. Let's do it. The following day, they brought Hope home from the hospital. Nathan was beside himself with excitement, having helped prepare the nursery with fresh flowers and a welcome banner he'd painted himself. She's so tiny, he kept saying as he watched Aria settle Hope into her crib. Was I that small when I was born? Even smaller, Lachlan told him, ruffling his hair. But you grew strong and tall, just like Hope will. As they stood together gazing down at the sleeping baby, Aria felt a wave of fierce protectiveness wash over her. This was her family, Lachlan, Nathan, Hope, and no one, not Andrew or anyone else, would take them from her. The week leading up to the wedding was a whirlwind. Aria found a simple ivory dress that flattered her post-pregnancy figure, and Lachlan arranged for a justice of the peace to perform the ceremony in the garden of the estate. Mrs. Winters took charge of the small reception, while Michael expedited the marriage license. The night before the wedding, Aria sat with Aunt Delia, who had been released from the hospital for the occasion, a home health nurse in attendance. "Are you happy, child?" Aunt Delia asked, her speech still slow but much improved. "Happier than I've ever been," Aria replied honestly, and terrified at the same time. "That's marriage," her aunt said with a smile, "and motherhood, joy and fear, all mixed up together." "I never imagined any of this," Aria confessed. "When I signed that surrogacy contract, I thought I was just helping someone have a child. I never expected to fall in love, to become a mother myself. Life rarely goes according to plan." Aunt Delia reached for her hand. "But sometimes it gives us exactly what we need, even when we don't know we need it." The wedding day dawned clear and crisp, a perfect October morning. The garden was adorned with autumn flowers, golden leaves crunching underfoot as the small gathering assembled. Nathan stood proudly beside his father, dressed in a miniature suit and holding the rings on a small pillow. Miss Q. Winters held Hope, wrapped in a soft pink blanket. As Aria walked toward Lachlan, escorted by one of the nurses who had helped care for Aunt Delia, she felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This was where she belonged, with this man, these children, this family they were building together. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. Lachlan's voice was steady as he promised to love and cherish her all the days of his life. Aria's was less so, breaking with emotion as she vowed the same. "By the power vested in me," the justice of the peace concluded, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Lachlan's kiss was gentle, but filled with promise. As they turned to face their small gathering of witnesses, Aria saw Aunt Delia wiping away tears of joy. Mrs. Winters beamed, bouncing Hope gently in her arms. Nathan rushed forward to hug them both. "Are you my real mommy now?" he asked Aria. She knelt to his level, despite her formal dress. "I'm your mommy in every way that matters, Nathan. In my heart, I've been your mommy for a long time." His answering smile was worth everything. The small reception was joyful but brief. Hope needed feeding, Aunt Delia tired easily, and everyone understood the circumstances that had necessitated the hasty ceremony. By late afternoon, the guests had departed, leaving the newly formed family to their first evening together as an official unit. "Mrs. Reed," Lachlan said softly as they stood in the nursery watching Hope sleep. "How does it feel?" "Perfect," Araya replied, leaning into his embrace. "And a little surreal. I never thought I'd have this again," he confessed. "After Caroline died, I closed myself off. Even when I decided I wanted another child, I tried to keep it clinical, detached. And then you walked into my office with your hard questions and your big heart, and everything changed. For me too," Araya whispered. "You and Nathan and Hope, you're the family I never dared dream of having." Their moment of peace was short-lived. The next morning, Michael called with troubling news. "Andrew's filed an emergency motion," he reported grimly. "He's claiming the hasty marriage is evidence of your attempt to manipulate the custody situation. He's requesting temporary guardianship of Nathan while the court evaluates his petition." "Temporary guardianship?" Lachlan's voice rose in disbelief. "He wants to take Nathan away from me?" "Only temporarily, and it's unlikely the judge will grant it," Michael assured him. "But you need to be prepared for a hearing. Next Tuesday." "That's only 3 days away," Araya protested. "Andrew's pulling strings," Michael said bluntly. "Like I warned you, he has connections." After the call ended, Lachlan sat heavily on the sofa, his head in his hands. "I can't lose Nathan. I can't." Araya sat beside him, her own fear masked by determination. "You won't. We won't. Andrew is grasping at straws. But what if he convinces the judge? What if they take Nathan away, even temporarily? It would devastate him. We need to prepare him," Araya said gently. "Just in case. We need to make sure he understands that no matter what happens, we're fighting for him and we love him." Lachlan nodded, though his eyes remained troubled. "How did we go from the happiest day of our lives to this in less than 24 hours? Andrew's timing isn't coincidental," Araya pointed out. "He wants to ruin our happiness. We can't let him." They decided to talk to Nathan that evening, keeping the explanation simple and age-appropriate. As expected, he was confused and upset. "But why does Uncle Andrew want me to stay with him?" he asked, his lower lip trembling. "I want to stay here with you and Araya and Hope." "And that's exactly where you belong," Lachlan assured him. "Uncle Andrew is confused right now. He's sad about your first mommy, and sometimes when people are sad, they do things that don't make sense." "Will the judge make me go with him?" Araya stroked his hair. "We don't think so, sweetheart. But if you do have to stay with Uncle Andrew for a little while, it would only be for a very short time, and we would talk on the phone every day and see you as much as possible." "I don't want to go," Nathan said, tears spilling down his cheeks. "Please don't make me go." Lachlan gathered his son into his arms. "We're going to do everything we can to make sure you stay right here with us. I promise." That night, as they lay in bed with Hope's bassinet nearby, Araya could feel the tension radiating from Lachlan. "We'll get through this," she whispered, nestling against him. "I know," he replied, his arm tightening around her. "I just hate what this is doing to Nathan. And to you. This should be a happy time for us with the wedding and Hope coming home." "It still is," Araya insisted. "Andrew can't take our happiness unless we let him." The day of the hearing arrived, grey and rainy, matching their apprehension. They had arranged for Mrs. Winters to stay with Hope and Aunt Delia, allowing both Araya and Lachlan to attend. Nathan, too, would be at the courthouse, though whether he would be called to speak to the judge was still uncertain. They dressed carefully, Lachlan in a conservative suit, Araya in a modest navy dress that projected stability and respectability. Nathan wore his school uniform, clutching his stuffed elephant for comfort. "Remember what we talked about?" Araya knelt to straighten his tie. "The judge just wants to make sure you're happy and safe. You just need to tell the truth. That I want to stay with you and Daddy and Hope." Nathan nodded solemnly. "Exactly." The courthouse was intimidating, all marble and echoing halls. Michael met them at the entrance, his expression serious but confident. "Andrew's already inside with his lawyer," he informed them. "Judge Harriman is presiding. She's fair, but by the book. Don't let Andrew provoke you, Lachlan. Stay calm and composed no matter what he says." The courtroom was smaller than Araya had expected, with only a few rows of benches. Andrew sat at one table with a sleek, expensive-looking attorney. He didn't look at them as they entered, but his posture stiffened, betraying his awareness of their presence. "All rise," the bailiff announced as Judge Harriman entered, a stern-looking woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes. The hearing began with Andrew's lawyer presenting their case. His argument was skillfully crafted to sound reasonable, while painting Lachlan and Araya in the worst possible light, a grieving widower who had become inappropriately involved with a surrogate, rushing into marriage to gain financial control, disrupting Nathan's stability in the process. The child has already lost his mother, the lawyer concluded. Now he's expected to accept a stranger as her replacement, while also adjusting to a new baby sister and the upheaval of his father's hasty remarriage. Mr. Jennings simply wants to provide his nephew with a stable environment during this tumultuous time. Araya felt Lachlan tense beside her as Michael rose to present their side. He was masterful, methodically dismantling Andrew's claims, presenting Lachlan as a devoted father who had found love again, and Araya as a positive addition to Nathan's life. Mrs. Reed has brought joy and stability to a household that had been marked by grief, Michael emphasized. Nathan has flourished under her care. To separate him from his father and the woman he has come to view as a mother would be traumatic and unnecessary. The judge listened impassively to both sides before addressing the courtroom. I'd like to speak with Nathan privately in my chambers. Mr. Reed, Mr. Jennings, you may accompany him, but I want to hear from the child without coaching or interference. As Nathan was led away, Araya squeezed Lachlan's hand encouragingly. He'll be fine. He knows what he wants. The wait seemed interminable. Araya tried not to fidget or glance at Andrew, who sat stone-faced at his table. Finally, the door to the judge's chambers opened, and Nathan emerged, followed by Lachlan, Andrew, and Judge Harriman. Nathan immediately ran to Araya, climbing into her lap. I told the judge I want to stay with you and Daddy, he whispered loudly. Having heard from all parties, Judge Harriman began, I am prepared to make my ruling on this emergency motion. Araya held her breath, her arms tightening protectively around Nathan. Mr. Jennings, while I appreciate your concern for your nephew's well-being, I find no evidence that Nathan is in any immediate danger or distress in his current home. On the contrary, he appears well-adjusted and firmly attached to both his father and his new stepmother. Your motion for temporary guardianship is denied. Relief flooded through Araya. Lachlan's hand found hers, squeezing tightly. However, the judge continued, given the recent significant changes in Nathan's home life, I am ordering a full evaluation by Family Services. Until that evaluation is complete, Mr. Jennings will be granted visitation rights, 1 weekend per month, to maintain Nathan's connection to his maternal family. Andrew's face darkened with anger, but he said nothing. Additionally, Judge Harriman said, turning to Lachlan and Araya, I expect your full cooperation with the Family Services evaluation. This court takes seriously the best interests of the child, and while today's ruling maintains the status quo, the final determination will depend on the outcome of that evaluation. We understand, Your Honor, Lachlan replied respectfully. We welcome the evaluation. As they left the courtroom, Nathan skipping between them in relief, Andrew blocked their path. This isn't over, he said quietly. Not by a long shot. Yes, it is, Lachlan replied evenly. You heard the judge. Nathan stays with us. For now. Andrew's smile was cold, but the Family Services evaluation will be thorough, very thorough. They'll look into your new wife's background, her financial situation before she met you, the circumstances of your relationship. Are you sure there aren't any skeletons in that closet, Lachlan? We have nothing to hide, Araya said firmly, though her heart raced at his implication. Everyone has something to hide, Andrew replied. It's just a matter of finding it. With that ominous statement, he turned and walked away, leaving them unsettled despite their victory. The next weeks were a mix of joy and tension. Hope thrived, growing stronger daily. Nathan, relieved to be staying with them, returned to his cheerful self. But the looming Family Services evaluation cast a shadow over their happiness. The social worker assigned to their case, Ms. Porter, was thorough and professional. She interviewed Lachlan and Araya separately and together, observed their interactions with Nathan and Hope, inspected the home, and spoke with Mrs. Winters and Nathan's teachers. She seems fair, Araya said after Ms. Porter's third visit, but I can tell she's reserving judgment. That's her job, Lachlan reminded her, to be objective and thorough. I know. It's just unsettling, being under such scrutiny. The scrutiny intensified when Ms. Porter began asking more pointed questions about their relationship timeline and the surrogacy arrangement. When exactly did your relationship change from a professional surrogacy arrangement to a personal one? She asked during one interview. It was gradual, Araya explained. We didn't plan it or expect it, but as I spent more time with Lachlan and Nathan, preparing for the baby, feelings developed. And when did you become physically intimate? Araya flushed at the directness of the question. Not until after I had moved into the estate permanently in my 3rd trimester. By then, our feelings for each other were clear, though we were still trying to honor the original agreement. Ms. Porter made notes without comment. And the decision to marry, was that influenced by Andrew Jennings's legal challenge? We were already engaged before Andrew filed any motions, Araya said truthfully. But yes, we did move up the wedding on the advice of our lawyer, not to manipulate the situation, but to formalize our commitment to each other and our family. The questioning continued, delving into Araya's background, her financial situation prior to meeting Lachlan, and her relationship with Aunt Delia. Nothing was off limits, nothing too personal. As November turned to December, they tried to focus on Hope's first Christmas, creating new family traditions while honoring Caroline's memory for Nathan's sake. But the stress of the ongoing evaluation and Andrew's periodic visitations with Nathan took their toll. He keeps asking me if I'm happy, Nathan reported after one such visit, and if Daddy ever gets angry, and if you ever say mean things about my first mommy. Araya exchanged a concerned look with Lachlan. What did you tell him? I said Daddy only gets angry when I don't clean my room, Nathan replied, and that you said my first mommy must have been wonderful because she made me, and I'm wonderful. Araya hugged him tightly. That's exactly right, sweetheart. Later, when Nathan was in bed, Lachlan poured them both a glass of wine. He's coaching Nathan, trying to get him to say something negative about us. Ms. Porter is too smart to be manipulated that way, Araya said, though worry gnawed at her. She can see how happy Nathan is here. I hope so, Lachlan sighed, because Andrew isn't giving up. A week before Christmas, Ms. Porter called to schedule a final interview. I'll be submitting my report to the court after the holidays, she explained, but I have a few last questions I'd like to address in person. When she arrived, her demeanor was more serious than usual. Some concerns have been raised that I need to discuss with you, she said once they were settled in Lachlan's study. What kind of concerns? Lachlan asked. Ms. Porter consulted her notes. There are allegations that the surrogacy arrangement between you was in fact a form of reproductive coercion, that Ms. Samuels, Mrs. Reed, was financially vulnerable and felt pressured to agree to terms that were not in her best interest. That's absurd, Araya protested. I sought out the surrogacy opportunity. I approached the agency, and the compensation was more than fair. Nevertheless, there are questions about the propriety of entering into a romantic relationship with someone who was essentially in your employ, Mr. Reed, especially given the significant power and financial imbalance. Lachlan's jaw tightened. Our relationship developed naturally and mutually. There was never any coercion or pressure from either side. And yet, Ms. Porter continued, the timeline suggests that your relationship began while Mrs. Reed was financially dependent on you and living in your home. Some might view that as exploitative. Who is making these allegations? Araya demanded. Andrew? Because he's twisting the facts to suit his narrative. I'm not at liberty to disclose my sources, Ms. Porter replied. I'm simply obligated to investigate all concerns raised about the home environment. After she left, Araya paced the study, seething. This is Andrew's doing. He's trying to make our relationship sound sordid and exploitative. It won't work, Lachlan assured her, though he looked troubled. Ms. Porter has seen us together. She knows how we are with Nathan, with Hope. She can judge for herself. But Araya wasn't so confident. What if she includes these allegations in her report? What if the judge believes them? Then we fight, Lachlan said simply. We've come too far to give up now. Christmas came, bringing a brief respite from their worries. They focused on creating a magical first Christmas for Hope and maintaining traditions for Nathan. The house was decorated with evergreen boughs and twinkling lights, and the scent of Mrs. Winter's baking filled the air. On Christmas Eve, as they sat before the fire watching Nathan arrange cookies for Santa, Lachlan pulled Araya close. No matter what happens with the evaluation, with Andrew, with any of it, he whispered, know that you are the best thing that has ever happened to me and our children. You've made us a family again. Tears pricked Araya's eyes. And you've given me everything I never knew I wanted. A home, a family, love. The peaceful moment was interrupted by the doorbell. Mrs. Winters went to answer it, returning with a grim expression. It's Mr. Jennings, she announced. He says it's urgent. Lachlan and Araya exchanged worried glances. Nathan, stay here with Hope and Mrs. Winters, Lachlan instructed as they went to the foyer. Andrew stood there, snow dusting his coat, his expression uncharacteristically somber. "What do you want, Andrew?" Lachlan asked warily. "It's Christmas Eve. I know I wouldn't be here if it wasn't important." Andrew hesitated, then held out an envelope. "This came to my office by mistake. It's from the court." Lachlan took the envelope cautiously. "Why would court documents be sent to your office?" "Because I'm still listed as Nathan's emergency contact at his school, and someone got confused," Andrew replied. "Just open it." Lachlan opened the envelope and scanned the contents, his face paling. "This is a hearing notice for January 5th regarding Nathan's permanent custody arrangement." "And hopes," Andrew added quietly. "Read further." Araya peered over Lachlan's shoulder, her heart sinking as she read, "In the matter of parental rights and custody of minors, Nathan Alexander Reed and Hope Caroline Reed." "Hope?" Araya's voice broke. "They're questioning our rights to Hope too?" "Apparently the evaluation raised some concerns," Andrew said, "about the validity of the surrogacy contract, about the circumstances of your relationship." "Because of your allegations," Lachlan accused, anger rising in his voice. Andrew held up his hands. "Look, I won't deny I raised concerns initially, but this has gone further than I intended. I never meant to put Hope's custody in question." "Why should we believe you?" Araya demanded. "You've been trying to take Nathan from us for months." "Because I'm withdrawing my petition," Andrew said simply. "I'll be informing the court tomorrow that I no longer wish to pursue guardianship of Nathan." Lachlan and Araya stared at him in disbelief. "Why?" Lachlan finally asked. Andrew sighed heavily. "Because Nathan told me something during our last visit. He said that when he grows up, he wants to be like his daddy, someone who knows how to love after losing someone, someone who can make a new family without forgetting the old one." Andrew's voice grew rough with emotion. "Caroline would have wanted that for him, for both of you, a chance to be happy again." He looked directly at Araya. "And you've given them that. I see it now." Arya was speechless, caught between suspicion and hope. "I can't withdraw the hearing entirely," Andrew continued. "That's up to the court. But I'll testify on your behalf. I'll tell them that Nathan belongs with you, that Hope belongs with you, that you're a family." "Why the sudden change of heart?" Lachlan asked, still wary. "Christmas Eve was Caroline's favorite day of the year," Andrew said softly. "She always said it was the day for forgiveness, for new beginnings. I think she would be ashamed of what I've done, of how I've dishonored her memory by trying to use her son as a pawn." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. For the first time, Araya saw not the calculating adversary they'd been fighting, but a man who had loved his sister and was lost in his grief. "Would you like to come in?" she found herself asking. "Nathan would love to see his uncle on Christmas Eve." Andrew looked surprised, then grateful. "I'd like that, if you're sure." They led him into the living room, where Nathan's face lit up at the sight of his uncle. "Uncle Andrew, did you come to see the Christmas tree? And Hope? She's awake now." Andrew knelt to hug his nephew, then approached the bassinet, where Hope lay gurgling. "She's beautiful," he said softly. "She has Caroline's chin." "We think so too," Lachlan agreed, a tentative truce in his voice. As the evening progressed, something shifted. Andrew played with Nathan, held Hope when offered, and spoke of Caroline with warmth rather than weaponizing her memory. It wasn't perfect. There was too much hurt for that, but it was a beginning. When Andrew left, promising to call his lawyer first thing in the morning, Lachlan and Araya stood in the doorway, watching his car disappear down the snowy driveway. "Do you believe him?" Araya asked. "I want to," Lachlan replied. "For Nathan's sake, for all our sakes." "Me too," Araya said, leaning against him. "It would be a Christmas miracle." Whether it was a miracle or simply a man finding his way back to what truly mattered, Andrew was true to his word. The hearing in January was brief, with Andrew testifying eloquently about Lachlan and Araya's fitness as parents. Ms. Porter's report, despite noting the unusual circumstances of their relationship, ultimately recommended that both children remain in their care. "Having observed the family extensively," she testified, "I can attest to the loving, stable environment Mr. and Mrs. Reed have created. Both Nathan and Hope are thriving in their care." When the judge ruled in their favor, granting them full legal custody of both children, with reasonable visitation rights for Andrew as Nathan's uncle, Araya felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. "It's over," Lachlan whispered, hugging her tightly as they left the courtroom. "They're ours, both of them, forever." "They always were," Araya replied, her heart full. "From the moment I first felt Hope kick, from the first time Nathan called me mommy." That evening, as they tucked Nathan into bed, he asked the question he'd been waiting to ask since the hearing. "So nobody can take me away now? Or Hope?" "Nobody," Lachlan assured him. "We're a family, buddy, always and forever." "And Uncle Andrew?" "He's still your uncle," Araya explained. "You'll still see him for visits, but your home is here with us." Nathan nodded, satisfied. "I knew it would be okay. Mrs. Winters said families that love each other stay together, no matter what." "Mrs. Winters is a very wise lady," Lachlan agreed, kissing his son's forehead. Later, as they stood in Hope's nursery watching their daughter sleep, Lachlan wrapped his arms around Araya from behind. "When you walked into my office that first day," he murmured against her hair, "I thought I was hiring someone to carry my child. I never imagined you'd end up carrying my heart as well." Araya turned in his arms. "And I thought I was just fulfilling a contract. I never dreamed I'd find a home, a family, a love I never want to live without." "We've been through so much in such a short time," Lachlan said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "The pregnancy, Hope's early birth, your surgery, Andrew's challenges, and we've weathered it all," Araya finished for him. "Together." "Together," he agreed, kissing her softly. "That's how we'll face whatever comes next. And whatever that is, it can't be harder than what we've already overcome." As if in agreement, Hope stirred in her crib, making the soft, cooing sounds that always melted Araya's heart. She reached down to stroke her daughter's cheek, marveling at how this tiny being had changed everything. 6 months ago, she had been Araya Samuels, a woman struggling to make ends meet, who had signed a contract to carry another man's child. Now she was Araya Reed, wife, mother of 2, with a future brighter than she had ever dared to dream. "What are you thinking about?" Lachlan asked, noticing her reflective expression. "How much can change in such a short time," she replied. "How life can surprise you when you least expect it." "Good surprises, I hope," he said, his arms tightening around her. "The best," Araya assured him, resting her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. "I never thought I'd have this, a family, a home, a love like this." "Neither did I," Lachlan admitted. "After Caroline died, I thought that part of my life was over. I focused on Nathan, on work, on just getting through each day. I never expected to feel this way again. And now? Now I can't imagine my life without you in it," he said simply. "You and Hope and Nathan, you're everything to me." They stood in peaceful silence, watching their daughter sleep, the soft glow of the nightlight casting gentle shadows on the walls of the nursery that they had prepared together with so much love. From down the hall came the soft pad of footsteps. Nathan, barefoot in his pajamas, appearing in the doorway with tousled hair and sleepy eyes. "I had a dream," he said, rubbing his eyes. "About all of us." Lachlan beckoned him over. "A good dream or a scary dream?" "A good one," Nathan said, leaning against Araya's side as she slipped an arm around his shoulders. "We were at the beach, and Hope was bigger, and she could walk, and we were building a sand castle together." "That sounds like a wonderful dream," Araya said, smiling down at him. "And you know what? We can make that dream come true this summer." "Really? We can go to the beach?" "We can go anywhere you want," Lachlan promised. "As a family." Nathan yawned, leaning more heavily against Araya. "I like being a family. Our family." "So do I, buddy," Lachlan said, his voice rough with emotion. More than anything. They tucked Nathan back into his own bed, then retired to their room, leaving both doors cracked open so they could hear if either child needed them in the night. In the quiet darkness of their bedroom, Lachlan pulled Araya close. "Thank you," he whispered against her hair. "For what?" "For giving me hope, for loving Nathan as your own, for bringing light back into our lives." Araya tilted her face up to his. "Thank you for seeing me as more than just a surrogate. For seeing me as a woman, a mother, a partner. You were always more than just a surrogate," Lachlan said softly. "From that very first day, when you asked if I would love the baby, not just provide for her, you were always more than just a contract to me. You were always more than just your name on a piece of paper. More than her name," Araya murmured. "That's what Aunt Delia used to tell me when I was growing up, that I was more than my circumstances, more than the expectations others placed on me." "She was right," Lachlan said, kissing her gently. "You're so much more. You're everything." As she drifted towards sleep in her husband's arms, Araya thought about the journey that had brought her here, a journey that had begun with a business arrangement, but had transformed into a love story, a journey from survival to belonging, from solitude to family. She had entered the Reed household as a surrogate, carrying a child she had promised to give away. But in the end, she had given nothing away at all. Instead, she had gained everything, a daughter she could raise and love, a son who had claimed her as his own, a husband who had reopened his heart, and a home filled with the kind of love she had always yearned for but never thought she would find. Araya Reed closed her eyes, at peace with where life had led her. Whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, she would face them as she had faced all the others, with courage, with determination, and with the strength that comes from knowing you are exactly where you are meant to be, with the people you are meant to love. Outside, a gentle snow began to fall, covering the estate in a blanket of white, pristine and full of possibility. Inside, a family slept, safe and warm in the knowledge that they had found in each other what so many spend a lifetime searching for, a love that transcends contracts and obligations, a love that heals past wounds, a love that creates a future brighter than any they could have imagined alone. And in her crib, baby Hope slept peacefully, unaware of the journey that had brought her parents together, unaware of the struggles they had overcome to be a family. All she knew was that she was safe, she was loved, and she was home. In the end, that was all any of them needed to know. The end